What's up guys, Matty here. In today's video, we're going to be checking out my top 10 favorite Waves plugins. I've been engineering for almost 20 years now, and Waves were the only plugins that were actually out when I first started. And what I find amazing with all the plugins that have come and gone over the years, there's still a couple of the plugins that I first started with that I'm still using in every mix today. So in today's video, I will show you my top 10 favorite Waves plugins and how I'm using them in my mixes. Let's go. All right, guys, so the first plugin that we're going to check out is RBase. I've used this plugin for so long. It is almost 90% of the time on my drums and maybe 50 to 60% of the time on my basses of every single mix I do. And this is basically the setting I have. The frequency can change between 80 and 60, and it's usually between like 11 and all the way sometimes down to 21 if I just want a little bit. But the starting point is around 12, 13, 11. And I'm just going to play these drums. I'm going to turn it on and off. This is off. This is on. And you guys can hear the difference it makes. It's slightly subtle the way I use it, but it's definitely there. And what it does, it adds some subharmonics to the bass frequency to make it stand out so you hear it better on smaller speakers. So here we go. And so I usually use it on my kick and snare bus, as you can tell. It not only makes the bass sound thicker, but it gives some thickness to the snare as well. And this can be super helpful on snares that are sounding kind of thin. Throw some RBase on it and it will fix it right up. Okay, so the second plugin on my list is probably the most controversial plugin on my list, which is the CLA Vocals. Some people love this plugin, some people hate this plugin. I'm on the lover side. When I first opened my plugin, this is the setting I have. It's the sub, the bite, and the push all on 0. Sometimes I will use this just like this at the end of my vocal chain just to push the vocal a little bit fuller. It just gives it something that makes the vocal stand out more, and it works well. Other times I will actually change the knobs or switch the compressor to spank or switch the EQ to top, or sometimes I'll just use one of the three. Another way I'll use this, and this is actually how I use it more so than not, is I love the slap and the stereo spread on this thing. And I will just keep these on and I will cut them down probably down to here. Now, even at here, down all the way -10, it still makes quite an impactful sound. I'm gonna try to play it on this vocal. Unfortunately, this is a song I got from my buddy Garrett Gregory. Go on and break it. You should check him out if you haven't. It already has some reverb on it, so you're not gonna hear it as well as you might if it was dry, but just so you can kind of get the idea of what the slap and stereo can do.
And break it, go do what you do. Hop in that car and drive a $1.22 out to his party, to a small town crush, out to his mom and dad that love you so much. But remember this, 'cause I always will.
So you can hear it definitely adds different sounds to things, and that slap is one of my favorites. Also, once in a while, if I have an ad-lib track with on a rap song or something like that, this chamber can sound pretty cool, and you can turn it up and down just to give that kind of wide open reverb sound. So this thing is really a Swiss Army knife. It's like you can use it the way it's set up with all 5 of them going, or you can use it in different ways like I do to help you achieve different things in a mix. Okay, the third plugin on my list is one of the newer ones that I'm using is the Clarity VX Deverb Pro. They also have just the Clarity plugin, which works well too for ambience. This I use for a lot of stuff when I get a home recording that was recorded in a room that doesn't sound so great, you know, that had a lot of hard surfaces and things were bouncing around. If I have too much reverb on a vocal before my processing, I can't really compress it to bring it forward because it will bring all the reverb up. This thing does a really good job at taking that out. And you can just, you know, bring it up, crank it. You can use the EQ here. There's a lower end model that works pretty well too. Just pick your different settings, singing, whatever you want, and just crank this until it starts bringing the reverb down, but doesn't sound unnatural. Also, playing with this tail smoothing can make a big difference. This is how long of the tail it's going to let you have. So a lot of times I'll crank it, it will sound kind of unnatural, and then you pull this tail smoothing up a little bit, and it will give a little bit of the reverb back in order to make it sound a bit natural. Now, once again, I don't have the greatest example for this because this is a song with a ton of reverb on it. That's really not what it's for, is to take off reverb that you've applied on the track. It's more to get rid of the room tone of of a room from a microphone. But I'm just going to play it for you so you guys can hear it with this vocal.
So go on and break it. So go on and break it.
So it did still take out quite a bit of that reverb, but because it's such a reverby track, it's not going to work in this situation. Make sure to try it out. If you do have a vocal that has a little bit too much room noise in it, it can really do the trick to fix that up. Next on the list is the world-renowned CLA 76. Everyone knows about this plugin. This is an 1176 clone. Supposedly cloned from CLA, Crystal Lord Algae. If you don't know, he's a famous mixing engineer, done thousands of rock albums. Cloned from some of his compressors. What I love about this compressor is you can switch from the blue model, which adds a bit more mid-range presence, a little more girth, or the black model, which is a little bit more transparent. I'm not going to play this. You guys have all heard at 1176, but this to this date is still one of my go-to. I flip back and forth between this one and 1176 from Universal Audio. But a lot of times I like using this one because it still sounds great, and you can switch the different models and see what tone might work for the vocal. So if you need a 76, 1176, that's the one to get. All right, so the next plugin on the list, and I wish I wasn't another CLA one, but I don't know, the guy does a good job making plugins, I guess, is the CLA Effects. I use this exclusively for ad-lib tracks and things that I want to sound different and stand out. Now, there's a bunch of different ways I use this one, kind of like the CLA vocals. I have my setting here, I just hit none, and then it shuts everything down. A lot of times I'll use this telephone or filter effect. I'll let you guys hear that really quick. So the telephone's this one.
Just keep my heart, I ain't gonna take it.
Instant telephone sound.
Just keep my heart, I ain't gonna take it. So go.
So the filter and telephone can both work for some like cool ad-lib effects. The drive, I don't use the distortion that much. Sometimes if it's needed, I will. Then there's this Canyon. I love this Canyon reverb on vocal ad-lib. So like a lot of times this would be the setting.
Just keep my heart, I ain't gonna take it. So go on and break it.
See how it just trails out there? Then add some slap, my favorite slap, and then another thing you can do is put the quarter on and then throw this into hold, right? That will hold the quarter note.
Just keep my heart, break it.
So really cool for, you know, creating effects, CLA effects. Funny how that works.
Break it.
And then you can add some chorus or a little bit of width. And really fast, you have a good sounding effects unit that will work on a multiple of stuff. So I don't always use this on a lead vocal, but for ad-libs, especially hip-hop stuff, this is my go-to. I can get to the sound I'm looking for really quick with just this plugin. Next is the C4. Now, this is a plugin I used for years. I don't use it as much anymore. I use the FabFilter one a lot, but there is a setting on here, and I guess I could probably recreate it with FabFilter, but it is called Pop Vocal. And this setting, for years, I would always put it on my vocal track because it just made things pop better. And I'll play it with and without it. And sometimes, you know, when you just need the vocal to stand out a bit more, this little bit of multi-band compression can really help to push it out a bit.
Go on and say it, it's not what you're thinking. You can just keep my heart, I ain't gonna take it. So go on and break.
So even with a vocal that's pretty much mixed with reverb on it, it still made it stand out a bit more and sound just a little bit better. So if you have a vocal and it's just not quite cutting through the mix, try the C4 pop vocal setting, and I promise you 9 times out of 10 it will probably make an improvement. All right, so the next plugin on my list is the Manny Delay plugin. All Manny's plugins are really good. The EQ's awesome. The reverb's really good. This is one I find I use more often than not. It's just a basic delay plugin. You can switch the different settings, quarter note and all that. You get your feedback here. Really easy to high pass and low pass. And then the magic of this plugin is down here though. You can add reverb, distortion, a doubler, or a phaser to make the delay just unique and different. And it's a quick way to do it. I'm all about finding, you know, tools that make things quick for when you have an idea of what you want to do. So whereas we could just have this delay here at the end of the song, for instance, which is cool, but you add this and like a little bit of doubler and a little bit of phaser. It just makes it that much more exciting. So Cool plugin to be able to add a little bit of effects to the end of your delay tails. All right, so the last two plugins on my list are actually together for this one. The last plugin is the NLS Bus. This thing is cool if you just want to add a little bit of drive or a little bit of saturation or a little bit of that console sound. When I went into Jason Joshua's seminar, he pulled this thing up with 8 different NLS buses, and I was like, what the hell is this? And so what it is just a ton of different NLS buses, all with basically the same settings, but switching between like the Neve one and the mic one and the spike one. I think the spike one's on here, yeah. And it's just different settings, but it adds this analog thickness that is pretty remarkable. Sometimes it can be a bit too much, and if that's the case, you can cut a couple of these down, like 2 and 6 are good ones to cut down. I'll play it on the drums with and without it, and you'll hear the thickness that this adds. Now, keep in mind, I do have to change the panning up a little bit in order for this to work. You're gonna pan the right side in a little more, but you'll still hear like the sonic difference, even if the pan sounds a little off. So you hear the difference. It's thicker. It just sounds more rounded. It sounds fuller. And then you turn it off and it's a little more like, you know, just a little stale. Really cool plugin or plugins to use to make your mix just, you know, your drums or bass just sound a bit more analog and a bit more fuller. Now, this is also the other plugin, the last plugin on my list I want to show you, which is the Studio Rack. Now, I know it's not actually a plugin. This one's free. This plugin I use for so much stuff. I have vocal settings, delay throws, you know, and I can come up, and what's great about this plugin is you can use other plugins in it with the VST3s. So I have a ton of chains because I go back and forth between Pro Tools and Studio One that I can just pull up and have the different plugins I want. This is one I have called Rooms, and it has 3 of the room reverbs I use quite a bit. So I can actually turn them on and off and audition different rooms that I'm using for, you know, a certain mix. So really cool plugin that you can do. I do a lot of parallel splitting. You can split EQs in here and put, you know, parallel compression. There's so much you can do with this plugin. And I even, not to do a shameless plug here, but I even have all my presets that you can get on my website here. And you can just load them right up, and they all work within the Studio Rack, so you can use it on whatever DAW you're using and just change the settings here. It's all mapped out and ready to go. All right, guys, so those are the 10 Waves plugins I use on every single mix. Let me know what your favorite Waves plugins are in the comments below. If you need your song mixed and mastered, hit me up at mixandmastermysong.com. You can also find my courses and presets there too. Talk to you soon.